that is about to come on shore. That little area that is the banding feature. This is about to come on shore here in the next 15, 20 minutes. The highest winds that you will see so far are going to be coming in with these bands. The torrential rainfall, I mean, the rain is going to be sick when it comes on in here because you're not going to be able to see your hand in front of your face for a while as this does approach and moves into the region here. Looking out for that, and just a little bit of a difference here as far as the radar goes. Let me see, that looks a little odd. See, now we'll start to see these little odd shapes. Right in here, this is a spin, this is a rotation that's occurring. It's not much, but these little things, that's what we'll watch. There may even be some interaction with land as we go on into the next several hours, too. When we see this coming on shore, sometimes you can get that friction to spin off a tornado or two. That is possible when you get in these sort of situations here as well. Down to the south here, the Miami radar, the MX. I don't see anything that looks too exciting there that would excite me or worry me. It's all just a straight line wind sort of coming in across Boynton Beach and the rest of the area there too. So looking up and down the line, that's where we are at the moment. The reflectivity still has that mass just offshore. We'll look at the modeling data here to take a look at the big picture, and the model says the HER model anyway, which is our hour-to-hour model. This is indicating to us where the storm is. What happens is it reinitializes every hour. So if it made a mistake, a boo-boo, it always fixes it pretty quickly. And so there's where the storm says it is at the moment, wrapping up, moving on to the west. The model has a good feeling for the enormity, if you will, of the eye, because it still has it being a very large entity there at the moment as it moves across. It's going to be going right over our buoy, by the way, so we'll get a lot of information there. This is at 10 o'clock tonight. It verifies at 10 p.m. later on tonight, so right about 6 hours from now, which says the actual center would still be out over the open water, but the relatively high winds that'll be coming with it will already be on shore. This will be the high wind area right in here. This is all going to be high wind coming on. It'll already be here into Port St. Lucie and West Palm Beach. When do you expect it to get at its worst? Well, I think some of this first banding will be in. That's about 9 o'clock tonight. I know we're talking to a lot of people here who are actually in South Florida, who are listening and watching here right now at the moment. And it's, you're looking at Port St. Lucie southward as an area where we've already had some scattered showers. Well, you haven't had banding yet. You haven't had the bands of the hurricane coming in. You just had some scattered, light 3 o'clock tonight. That'll be a north wind. If you live on the beach, it'll be coming in from your left. If you were looking out over the open water, it would be to your left. That's the direction your wind's coming in. So if you got an awning or something that faces to the north, watch out for it there throughout that whole area there. I talked to you about this a little bit earlier, too. If you want to use the old adage, if you want to put your back to the wind, you would be looking southward. If you're in West Palm Beach and at 9 o'clock tonight, the wind will be at your back if you're looking southward along the beach, straight along the beach. Port St. Lucie would be about the same thing. Always remember, if the wind is exactly at your back, then you are very likely going to put your left hand out, point it straight out, and that's where low pressure is going to be. If anything, it's going to be uh, the it's now a hurricane is going to be to your left. And if you look again at the big picture here, we'll go a little bit further out. We just got another little update. And so the last image here, probably gotta do that again. Don't do that. Let's do this. So I'll start it up again and see what we got. I'll stop it right here. That's 6 hours from now, 7 hours from now. Well, I thought it uploaded. Anyway, just offshore. Let me go back to an hour earlier, 21Z. We'll take a look at it from there. Move it in motion. So the western part of the eye at 9 o'clock will be very close to West Palm Beach. Now, here's the thing. If this is the trajectory, and I have no reason to believe it's going to be off more than a few miles. So let me put, I'll go with black here. I hope this shows up pretty well. So here's the center. This is the hurricane. I'm just going to draw. Well, that didn't work at all. I apologize for that. That was dumb. Let's try this. There's the center. That is the low pressure itself. So as you look at it, everything is wrapping in a counterclockwise fashion around this. So that means from a point just south of West Palm Beach, that will be an offshore wind. The ocean over here from West Palm Beach southward, the ocean is going to be completely flat down here. There'll be no surf from here down, no surf at all. And then as you get to the point to where you're north, that'll be an onshore wind. All this is coming onshore. And so this won't be flat. This will be some of those 8 to 10 foot breakers, waves that'll be coming onshore. Right in that area right there. I don't know if that looked like a mess. I apologize if it was. But if you get down to the nitty gritty of the thermodynamics of a low pressure and adjacent hurricane, that's what we're talking about right there as the storm comes in and moves generally in that direction. So kind of looking at everything going on by then through the rest of the night, it will actually start to, I don't know if it clears out completely, but it's going to try to start after like 3 o'clock. You should be waking up to sunshine tomorrow morning in Fort Lauderdale, into West Palm Beach, and Port St. Lucie. There'll be thunderstorms into the afternoon, and actually that'll be a little band, an outer band that'll be hanging back across the southern part of the city, and so that might actually kind of sit with you there for a while and not really just go away. So there's your low pressure center. The adjacent areas off to the north. Here's all the showers and thunderstorms that are occurring, and these could possibly be the ones that are tornadic or maybe water spouts out here over the open water, but if they come on shore, then they're called tornadoes. So a lot to talk about, a lot to think about here. We've been on the air for quite some time now, but we're talking basically here about the potential kinetic energy, the potential of what could happen, and it's just now beginning to happen in many of these areas here. So kind of think about that into the short term and make sure that you know what's going on here into the area. Thank you so much for all the questions. The questions that you did answer. The National Hurricane Center did go with 980
center that system move across our area. If you drew a line from the middle of Polk County to Crystal River, that's where the eye is expected to track across our zone. And so that's what we're seeing out there. Of course, we're here to answer your questions about what you can expect and what you might be seeing out there. And we love also seeing weather reports from you guys. We just remind you to tell us where you're located when you're in those comments, providing those questions or those weather observations with us.
Meteorologist Rebecca Barry, you'll see her in just a moment on WFLA News Channel 8 with the Max Fender 8 weather team and Max Fender 8 Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli. Rebecca will catch up with you in a little bit. JB here with you live in your hurricane headquarters. Let's talk about the timing and what we're expecting with Hurricane Nicole as far as a landfall. Clearly, impacts already starting to be felt across the state of Florida, especially on Florida's east coast, with hurricane warnings and watches in effect, as this is going to be a rain and wind event, however, storm surge event as well. However, let's make this clear as a reminder, this is not going to be anything remotely close to the devastation that we saw with Hurricane Ian, as Rebecca noted just a moment ago. This isn't apples to oranges, more like apples to strawberries as far as comparing these two systems. So while there is going to be power outages, we're going to see storm surge, there is going to be flooding, and we're going to see a lot of the typical impacts that you would see with a tropical storm or a low-end category or low-end category 1 system. This is not going to be a major hurricane. Major hurricane is category 3, 4, or 5, and this is again a low-end Cat 1. You can see here on the right side of your screen, Hurricane Nicole as of right now, max wind speeds at 75 miles per hour. The pressure dropping to 980 millibars. Movement is about mediocre. This isn't slow or super fast moving. It's kind of medium fast at a westward movement at approximately 12 miles per hour. The NHC forecast track has been extraordinarily accurate so far. And in fact, this might be one of the most accurate forecast models that we have seen all season long. So as the track continues to take shape and narrow, the forecast cone narrowing across the state of Florida, we're getting a very obvious consensus forming as far as where the storm is going to be heading. Fort Pierce and Stewart, Florida, are some of the towns that we've been following, coastal communities, as far as where the storm is going to make impacts. Sometime we anticipate 11 to maybe midnight tonight, or even 1 to 1:30ish in the morning, somewhere in that range, really right around the stroke of midnight. So, of course, we'll be live across all platforms for landfall coverage as Hurricane Nicole gets a little bit closer to Florida's east coast. As far as the Tampa Bay area, there is not going to be significant impacts, except maybe with the exception of East Polk County, closer to Orlando on the east side of the I-4 corridor. So what we want to do now is ask our commenters on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Hello to our YouTube Live audience from our hurricane headquarters. We are looking for your real-time weather reports. So what we would like for you to do is comment with hashtag HeyJB or without it. But if it has hashtag HeyJB, I can animate it on screen. Let us know where you're watching from, and then put on your forecaster cap. Give us the best description that you can for a weather report as to what the conditions are like where you're joining us from. So location and weather conditions as to where you're located, and if it has a hashtag, we can animate it on screen. So I'll start looking for them now. As again, Max Fender Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli and Rebecca Barry are going to be joining us in approximately 5 minutes time. As we wait for some of them to come in, let's go to some of the YouTube live comments. Danielle wants to know, any chance of the Skyway Bridge closing down? This is a possibility, of course, that being one of the main and most traveled bridges in the Tampa Bay area. And any time that wind speeds escalate to a certain point, there isn't a certain number that they really go with. But if it gets dangerous enough for drivers to cross over that bridge, yes, there is a chance, of course, for the Sunshine Skyway Bridge to close down. Let's look for some others here in the comment section. Nick Rose is asking about the Artemis launch, and of course the window that has been pushed back to November 16th. We are paying attention to that as well, and we anticipate an update now that, of course, we have Nicole getting a little bit closer to Florida's Space Coast. Let's go here. Let's look for our weather reports in the comment section. I'm a cat. Hashtag KJB. Any idea what tomorrow afternoon is going to be like? Well, it depends on where you are. Tomorrow afternoon is going to be very clear on Florida's East Coast, but as we're talking more towards the Gulf Coast side of Florida, the closer you are to the Gulf Coast side, the more that you're still going to be feeling some lingering elements from the storm, but not anything significant. Really, by late afternoon, early evening tomorrow, most of the storm is going to clear out through central Florida. Let's look at a couple other comments. Yolanda Stevens, hashtag KJB. Will the weather in Tampa be severe enough to close the courts? I'm not entirely sure. I think I've already heard of small businesses closing. I've heard of school closures. We have a list of school closures on WFLA.com. Let me also point out, very important, on WFLA.com. And our YouTube Live and Facebook Live audience will likely remember this from Ian. On WFLA.com, we have the real-time wobble tracker, and I'll ask our terrific YouTube Live moderators to put a link. I believe that it's in the pinned comment. The real-time wobble tracker is super, super helpful in instances like this when you're talking about a system that is about to make landfall. You have the NHC's forecast track, and everyone's following the track because that's where they expect the system to make landfall. But it never really goes precisely according to plan. There are going to be deviations from the track, and those deviations are going to be, in this case, the north or the south, and we can follow whether the wobble, if you will, is going to wobble up or down, north or south. And that's what the wobble tracker does. So that is on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. If you go to Google and you search WFLA wobble tracker, it'll also pop up there as well. And that's a handy tool to check over the course of the night. You don't have to just stare at it for hours, but to look at it every now and again and see if the system is wobbling more north or more south, especially if you're on Florida's East Coast. That's extraordinarily helpful. Let's go to some of the weather reports that have come in. Monica's joining us from Orlando in the stream center here. Oh, we had your comment, Monica. Where did it go? Here it is. Hashtag KJB from Orlando. Rain on and off. It's cold. No wind at this time. Okay. So a little bit of those outer ring bands starting to impact Central Florida, particularly in Orlando. Let's go to the Mama Guide, one of our great moderators on YouTube Live. Hashtag KJB Parkland, Florida, west of Boca. We've got canals rising, lots of wind. Deerfield Beach waves are already over the pier. And these are some of the reports that we are hearing as well. Let's go to back. Luba H, hashtag KJB. Here in Coconut Creek, heavy rain on and off, light wind gusts will happen to shift south from now to landfall. If it's within the cone, it's possible. But let me remind our audience that wobbles are going to occur. So a wobble to the south is absolutely possible, and that's why the wobble tracker is so crucially important and a great tool for our weather team here. And we have it again. If you just want to see the wobble tracker, it's on WFLA.com, or you can click on the link in the description on this video. But as far as, again, I want to remind our audience, if you look back to 3 days ago at some of the models, there has been tremendous consensus. This has been one of those systems where forecasters have, up until this point, they have been very accurate. And the science has really pointed us in the right direction, quite literally, with this system. So that is great news for us in the meteorology and news business, because it helps us to inform you. Everyone remembers Ian. And while this is no Ian, I want to make this clear, no Ian, everybody remembers how the system was going to hit Tampa Bay directly, and then the track shifted south. The reason was because we had a wider cone, and the cone started to also nudge to the south as well. So those two factors combined, we went from it being a landfall directly in Tampa Bay and, places like, St. Pete Beach getting hit directly, all the way down to Fort Myers and Fort Myers Beach getting hit directly. So this is not expected to be that significant of a deviation from the track because of a way higher confidence in the models that we have been seeing here with Hurricane Nicole. Look who's walking back in, meteorologist Rebecca Barry. Rebecca, if you need some water, or if you need a break or anything.
I think I'm going to get a little bit of water in about 30 minutes.
All right, there you go. So we've got some time here on the stream. Welcome back in, everybody. Meteorologist Rebecca Barry live on stream. Any updates, Rebecca, that you can share for our audience as you've been monitoring the progress of Hurricane Nicole?
And so it is a hurricane now, which is interesting because we expected this, but it did not make that 4 o'clock update. And so that tells me that either the hurricane hunter's flying through it, some of the sea buoys that it moved over, or some of the buoys over the Bahamas probably picked up on those sustained winds around 75 miles per hour. And that's why we got the upgrade as an intermediate advisory.
Let's go to some of the comments in our Facebook Live comment section now. YouTube Live, Facebook Live, use a hashtag, ask a question, and we can interact with you live here on WFLA now. Carrie Spera from the WFLA Facebook page, hashtag KJB, will you be doing an all-nighter with us? I'm in Okeechobee, and there is steady light rain and wind right now, live watching you. Well, hi to you, Carrie. And so our coverage plan is we're going to be doing streaming periodically over the course of the night. YouTube Live, we are not going anywhere. This is the YouTube Live destination for, again, interactive coverage of Hurricane Nicole, and we're going to be talking with you. It's not as much us just going through numbers and diving through the analysis, but really just having a real and frank conversation with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes I think that's why people come back and watch us, is because we're just gonna talk to you and break down the models and have an average Joe or Jane conversation with you when it comes to these systems as we look here at the latest track. And it is going across Central Florida. It's going across Lakeland. Again, 7 a.m. tomorrow. So that goes back to the question really quickly. Will it be an all-nighter? Periodic streaming over the course of the night, and then 5 a.m. tomorrow, we are in coverage for the Tampa Bay area here on Tracking the Tropics. So there's going to be streams over the course of the night. And then tomorrow morning, we really pick things up as well with coverage for Lakeland, for Polk County, for Pasco County, and some of the other areas that are going to be hit by this storm once it moves more inland. Let's go to a comment on YouTube Live. This one comes in from Taekwon. Oh, hold on. It glitched out here. Let's go back to it.
Gotta be faster on here.
Right? Those comments, they come in. Is it safe to travel from Lee County to Duval County tonight? I'm 22. I'm in Lee County visiting. I need to be in Duval by Friday morning. Any advice? Wondering if any roadways will be closed?
So I would avoid A1A. I-95 should be fine. If you don't have to be there till Friday, I would wait until later tomorrow afternoon to leave. I would not go tonight because conditions will be deteriorating throughout the night. I think you should wait until the worst of the storm passes, which will be after the midday tomorrow, and then you have plenty of time. You're not going to encounter anything along I-95 that would be impeding your travel that way other than just the normal accidents that we see.
Let's go to Jenny on the Facebook Live comment section. Hashtag Hey Rebecca. What's going to happen in Lakeland and when? Big questions are surrounding Lakeland, and not surprising because Polk County is right in that cone right now.
Absolutely. And so in Lakeland, your conditions will deteriorate overnight, just like everyone else's. But you are going to see those 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained winds and gusts upwards of 55 miles per hour. And that should start after about 4 a.m. for Lakeland. By 7 a.m., the center of the storm is moving over Polk County. And that's when your winds will most likely be at their worst, leading up to that. The center of the storm crossing Lakeland. And so that will be 6, 7, 8, 9 a.m. would be the worst for Lakeland.
We've got a comment coming in from, hold on a second, 321, right? Is that, yes, that's accurate. Okay, 321. How's Vero going to be at 8 a.m.? So Vero Beach right there on the coast, they're already, feeling this.
Yeah, they're rocking and rolling along the coastline right now of the east coast of Florida, and that will continue through the overnight hours. The system's expected to make landfall around 2 a.m. You can see Vero right there. So the worst of the weather will be passing Vero in between midnight and about 4 a.m. This is 5 a.m. and you're still going to have some pretty heavy rain in Vero through the 5 to 7 a.m. hour. But by 8 a.m., the worst of it is really past Vero. You're on the weaker side of the storm at that point. I don't think it's going to be sunny and dry and not windy, but you'll be more in the light mist to drizzle to moderate rain as opposed to the heavy pounding downpours.
Let's continue to go to the questions and comments. Meek Millions. Yeah, that's a great name. On the WFLA Facebook page, hashtag AJB. Should we be worried in West Palm Beach?
So parts of West Palm Beach flood, and so those flood-prone areas will be, unfortunately, probably impacted, especially by the storm surge and the higher than normal high tides. I do think that a lot of the coastline of West Palm is very well developed, and you're not going to see a lot of terrible damage there, but there will be some roof damage in West Palm. There will be some power outages in West Palm, and the flood-prone areas will most likely flood in West Palm.
Yeah, this is a question that we had asked a short time ago, but we were talking about the consensus in the models, Rebecca, and how this has really been a very precise forecast track by the NHC. Christine from the WFLA Facebook page wants to know, hashtag Hey Rebecca, could Nicole change paths? And we were talking right before you walked in about how there was that that change in the forecast track with Ian. Again, Ian is not the same storm as Nicole, very two different as far as intensity. had that south budge, significant budge to Fort Myers Beach with Ian. There's no expectation for that level of deviation with this storm, correct?
And so the studies are still ongoing with Ian as to exactly why Ian made that more southern jog, which was, of course, forecasted 24 hours out. It wasn't last minute like we saw with Charlie, where Charlie we really expected to be a Tampa Bay impact, and we didn't know until it was turning into Punta Gorda that that's what was going on. We knew 24 to 36 hours out that Ian was not going to be a Tampa Bay impact. It was going to be a Fort Myers impact. And in my personal opinion, land interaction has a lot to do with it. That's something that forecast models don't take into account very well when the rain bands and the outer bands, and especially those middle bands, not necessarily the outermost bands, start to interact with land, they experience friction, and that slows them down. And so when a storm approaches the west coast of Florida, like Ian did and like Charlie did, and from that direction, that right quadrant of the storm starts to slow down, and I think it helps it turn in. We saw that with Charlie, we saw it a little bit with Ian, but it's not the case with the East Coast. What we saw with Matthew, and when it approached the West Palm area, is that because of the shape of the coastline and the direction that storms spin on the East Coast, it actually pushes it off. It wobbles it away from the coastline instead of digging it in. Like when the stronger side of the storm approaches the east coast of Florida, it digs in and makes that turn. The west coast of Florida, when it approaches the east coast, a lot of time it wobbles further offshore. We saw it with both Dorian and with Matthew on the east coast, kind of wobbling further away from the coastline after interacting with it a bit.
You use that word, wobble.
Yeah.
Can we bring up the wobble tracker
Absolutely.
and show any updates on the wobble tracker? Because that will, of course, be interesting in the wobble tracker we've been talking about. You can click on the link, YouTube Live audience, in the pinned comment, and it'll take you over exclusively to the real-time wobble tracker on WFLA.com if you just want to keep that bookmark and check it over the course of the night. SFL, while you're bringing that up, wants to know, Hollywood here, it's raining, not too much of wind just yet, but can it grow to a Category 2 storm? And while can it and will it are different questions. Can it? Sure, but will it?
No. And we've got dry air intrusion. We've got a little bit of drier air. This system is not fully tropical. It did become a tropical storm instead of a subtropical storm, but you can see how all of the convection is pretty far out away from the center, and you can see that drier air getting pulled in on the northeast side there, drying that out. And so I just don't see a reason that this would intensify into a Category 2 storm.
So this is the most slight of north jogs, perhaps, that we can note as far as the wobble tracker. So
yeah, let's zoom in on it.
Yeah, so if you look here, look for the center of circulation, folks. Rebecca, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're looking at the blue line is the history. The red line is the national hurricanes, the center of the track. And so what we're looking at is if the center of the eye of this storm is perfectly following that red line, although it looks like it's a little north of the red line at this point. Now, about an hour ago, it looked like it was a little south, and storms do not travel in a perfect line. And so this may be exact with the south and the northern jog. It may end up being exactly what the National Hurricane Center predicted. But this is a tool that we use once the storm gets within satellite and radar distance to basically interpret the minutia of the motion of the storm, because a wobble over Freeport could mean big differences in where the worst of the weather ends up once it's along the Florida coastline. It's magnified in distance. That change in direction and trajectory. And so the middle rain bands are starting to interact with Jupiter right now. And so I'm looking for if that slows the storm down and causes it to push off of the coastline. Remember, we just talked about how land interaction causes it to push off of the coastline on the East Coast and dig in when it pushes on the West Coast. And so this one may take a northern jog over the next couple of hours, or a northern wobble, based on the friction that those rain bands are starting to feel as they make their way over Jupiter, Palm Beach, and Fort Pierce.
And look, I want everyone on your screens here, in the center of your screen, to look at the list of coastal communities from Melbourne, Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, Jupiter, Palm Beach, Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale, and many communities in between those as well, various neighborhoods and towns. So a wobble could be a difference maker for certain neighborhoods. Now, look, a lot of these neighborhoods, Rebecca, are going to be hit regardless of wobbles.
Yeah.
But wobbling is going to dictate exactly what is going to happen more like hour by hour, and more, town by town when it comes to the actual landfall itself.
Yes, and so I think everyone that we're looking at is going to experience a tropical storm. The wind field for hurricane force winds with this system is very small. And so the wobble basically is helping us try to determine, is it Jupiter that gets the hurricane force winds, or is it Fort Pierce, or is it Palm Beach? And that, because it's such a small area of winds that are actually hurricane strength, most of them are tropical storm force strengths. Not saying that you can't get significant damage from tropical storms. When you look at the breakdown of the wind field for Matthew, we didn't see any hurricane force winds on land with Matthew because of the wobble. And so all of the damage that we saw from Hurricane Matthew was actually from tropical storm force winds. And so people try to brush things off as just a tropical storm, and I try to remind them that they can still be quite damaging, particularly for coastal communities. And power outages are the most widespread impact that we see from a lot of the tropical storm force winds.
Let's get to another weather report. Let's go to Corey Bench on the WFLA-JB Facebook page. Hello to the audience over there on my Facebook page. Vero Beach here. Strong gusts of wind bands coming in more frequent. Weather is starting to, I believe, that's deteriorate there in Vero Beach, and that sounds about right when you're looking here at this map, Rebecca.
Yeah, you're getting the core band, inner band, middle bands, and inner bands are starting to move onshore. Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, Jupiter, Palm Beach, and Boca Raton. You're still in the outermost rain bands in Cape Canaveral and Melbourne, and so you'll get a break in the heavier rains. The heavier rains are moving onshore with that first band. You'll get a little bit of a break, and then another round of more serious storms. Those tropical gusty downpours right behind that.
Yeah, Vero Beach. Now, based on the track, and again, this is where wobbles come into play, but the north side of the storm is, are we calling it the messy side, the dirty side? What's the word? The messy side?
Yeah, the messy side, because it's to the north of the eye that we'll see the threat for tornadoes. And with this system, the way that it's lopsided, it's really the north and northwest side of the storm.
We're seeing it here on your screen. You can just see a lot of that concentrated what would be precipitation on the northwest side of the storm. So, and is that typical, Rebecca, as far as the northwest side being?
No, not really.
Yeah.
No, this is a pretty unusual storm, and I think it's because of its origin as subtropical. And then because subtropical storms are more elongated and they're less symmetrical, all of the heaviest winds and heaviest rains are well away from the center of rotation. Once it did make the conversion to tropical, it just didn't have time to get that symmetry and get that more classic look to it.
Yeah, very interesting. So we talk all the time on Tracking the Tropics. We're live every Wednesday at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock Central. And when we're talking about storms, we're so often talking about the southeast quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
And this is more of a, if you're looking at a clock, this is more like 11 o'clock at night, maybe 10 to 11 o'clock at night on the clock as far as the worst sections of the storm. And tornadic activity is a certainty.
It's not a certainty. We're not seeing a lot. Not much has moved onshore that could create a tornado at this point, and a lot of the friction of land with these rain bands has to do with its tornadic potential, so we can't really look out into the outermost rain bands and see which rain bands over the ocean might be tornadic once they do start to move onshore, because that change in speed because of the friction with land is really what helps that rotation. And so that won't be something that we're really able to determine until those rain bands start to make their way onshore.
Lori Miller, as we welcome back in Max Federer, Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli into the Stream Center. Lori wants to know, hashtag KJB, is Jacksonville in the clear? And no, Jacksonville is not in the clear at this time, correct?
That's correct, yeah. And Rebecca is the expert on Jacksonville because she worked in Jacksonville for a very long time. She's from Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Jacksonville is going to experience a really messy Thursday. Your flooding in the St. Johns River areas will be significant just due to the onshore winds that you've had leading up to this. I think you're going to get a lot of power outages, particularly in the neighborhoods like Mandarin, like Arlington, like Ponte Vedra, where you have those beautiful old trees that sometimes get compromised by the wind gusts. I think you're going to see wind speeds a little bit lighter than what you saw with Matthew, but a little bit stronger than what you saw with Ian.
Let's go back to Facebook Live, and Donna Chisser wants to know on the WFLA Facebook page, hashtag Hey Rebecca, how about Orlando? She's got a daughter there for a conference right now.
Oh, Orlando is probably going to have some pretty messy moments. I'm worried about the potential for tornadoes in Orlando. I'm worried about the traffic that's normally in Orlando, along with those gusty winds.
Let's go to Annie. And I'll bring you guys both up on screen. You guys, we're looking for hashtag Hey Jeff and Rebecca. Annie wants to know on the WFLA Facebook page, is there any chance the storm will break apart once it hits land, or is it moving too quickly? This is a good question.
Okay, yeah, I'll take this one. So this is a great question. It is going to weaken when it hits land, but it's moving too fast for it to break apart before it gets to the Tampa Bay area. So it's going to maintain its core and its intensity to some degree. It's going to weaken, obviously. When it comes onshore, wind 75. When it gets to Polk County, 65. When it gets to the Nature Coast, probably about 50 to 55 mile-an-hour winds. And we probably won't see too many gusts past that. That's about what we'll see.
Let's go back to YouTube Live. Let's go to Sting Sunrays. Tornadoes, what worries me the most with this one? Hashtag KJB. Do we agree with
yes, we always see some tornadoes with landfalling tropical systems. By the way, I should mention that we had to give Rebecca a break because she's been talking straight for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And she has some other stuff that she's got to do too. So I'm going to be with you for about the next 15 minutes or so, and then I got to run downstairs. We're going to get the new track from the National Hurricane Center, and so it's going to be a long night, that's for sure. But so yes, there are going to be some. I don't think there are going to be a tremendous amount. I don't. I don't know why I have that feeling. But, and by the way, depending upon where you live, if you're north of the storm, you have a better chance of seeing tornadoes. The track is going to take it from places like Fort Pierce and then westward towards probably just north of Lakeland, maybe Polk City. So anywhere in that line, I-4 north and east, you'll have the best chance of tornadoes. South of that, there's going to be less of a chance. Not a zero chance. There'll still be some chance, but it diminishes significantly on the south side of the storm.
So
And those tornadoes are not going to necessarily be confined to the core. They actually are more likely to be on the outer bands, which means there may be a better chance of seeing them, north into Daytona Beach, let's say, or, Ocala.
Right. But as far north as Jacksonville, JB
Sure,
wants
there's
to
a
know.
possibility of that. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so as the
I
more
wouldn't say there's not going to be a lot. There's
Yeah.
not going to be a lot. I don't think they're going to be, we're going to see catastrophic damage from tornadoes, but there will likely be some.
let's go to one of the next questions that we've got in our comment section. We're not just talking about Florida. We're talking about other states here too. We've got a lot of folks joining us from various states. Pamela wants to know, hashtag JB, any chance this will hit Alabama, the Alabama Gulf Coast?
Mm-hmm. Alabama's not going to get much. They got a little bit of rain, especially along the border of Alabama and Georgia, and some wind gusts are probably 35 miles an hour. But that's about it. Alabama's going to escape the worst of this.
I want to give you an opportunity as we get some more comments in the queue, Jeff. I'm going to look for a few more from our team because they're coming in across a lot of different platforms right now, and I want to get in as many as possible. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Again, the Wobble Tracker is on www.delay.com.
Yep.
And when we're going to be going to it in spots here and there over the course of the night. But if people just want to monitor the Wobble Tracker, it's there live for our audience. And that's really a handy bookmark because it'll show, and maybe you can explain, I'll put you up on screen, you can explain how that will indicate whether or not there's deviations from the track.
Right. If you remember, if you were watching during Ian, we could see all of it wobbled a lot up until it made landfall. We don't see that with this system. And let me tell you why we don't see it too much yet with this system. The reason why the cores of these storms often wobble is because you get a big blow up of huge convection on one side, and that kind of pulls the system this way. And then you get a big, and then that rotates around, the thunderstorms, the convection rotates around the other side, and that weight, essentially, that mass pulls it the other way. And it just kind of keeps doing this. Sometimes wobble can turn into a deviation. That's what this helps us do. Notice you see the blue line. In fact, let me grab this. Pardon me moving out of the picture for 1 second. Because I'm going to zoom in a little bit just to kind of give you a clearer view. So the past track of this storm is in the blue. And then the forward track of this storm is in the red. You can barely see it on the left side of your screen there. If this storm, you can see also the eye wall, by the way, and you'll be able to see this eye wall better once it gets closer to the U.S. Right now, notice how the eye wall is not incredibly clear, and that's because we're using U.S. radars to shoot across the Bahamas, and so there's something called attenuation happening where the signal kind of gets somewhat muted, and it really can't see the eastern part of the eye wall. But anyway, the point of this is we'll be able to look at the eye wall and say, okay, it's on track. Look where the icon is. It's right in the center of that. Oh, wait a second. Now the center, of the storm is deviated south or north of the track, and this could be taking a track further north, and therefore Vero Beach, Sebastian, you're going to get hit directly, or same thing with Cape Canaveral, so on and so forth, if it were to deviate south closer to Jupiter or West Palm Beach. And eventually, by the way, this also applies through places like Polk County and the Nature Coast tomorrow as it moves through.
Let's go to this comment. Nancy wants to know about Marion County. Hashtag here, Rebecca Nancy Castro from the WF Facebook page. Marion County, please. Yeah, we got a lot of county shout outs in our comment section. We'll try to get to as many as possible.
Yeah. So let me look at we're going to be getting the latest track in just a couple of seconds. We didn't get it yet, unfortunately. Otherwise,
so folks, if you were about to hop off the stream, maybe stick around for just an extra moment because that track will be here. That new track, the latest track, and we'll see the track shift in the wobble tracker, correct? That will update live.
Mm-hmm.
So the new track will be reflected.
Yeah, and we'll zoom out again on this and come back to it. So Marion County, the Ocala area, the storm is going to weaken by the time it gets to you. We do think some outer bands could produce some isolated tornadoes there. And in this area, we could see as much as 3-4 inches of rain. But, we oftentimes will see 3-4 inches of rain in an hour. If we see 3 or 4 inches of rain in Florida in an hour, we get flooding. If we see 3 or 4 inches in a matter of 2-3 hours, we don't get flooding. In this case, the rain is not going to all fall within an hour or two. It's going to fall over the course of 6 to 8 hours. So most of our ground can handle that. Now, there are some ponds and some lakes that are at the tippy top. There are some rivers that are slightly swollen, and there is some ground that is still somewhat wet. But again, we've been dry for a while, and it's been a while since we've seen Ian. So we don't think we're going to see widespread disastrous flooding by any means. But there will be pockets of flooding in places possibly like Ocala.
As we wait for the latest forecast track, you guys, that forecast track, are we getting it on an hour-to-hour basis? Computer.
Say it again?
No, is it coming in hourly now?
Yes, the track doesn't come in hourly, but the update of where the position is. So notice how the position is kind of right under me. So that position gets updated on an hourly basis. It used to be every 3 hours, but the track itself, we get the latest advisories every 3 hours or so. And if there's going to be a deviation to the track, the next one, it's not often that they're going to change the track at 7 p.m. They'll change it at 10, unless there's something drastic that happens, in which case they would have to do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
As Rebecca rejoins us here, everybody, we've got this comment that just came in, and I'm going to try to get it back up on screen. Here it is. Riders wants to know, hashtag KJB, how's Port St. Lucie?
Yeah, absolutely. Port St. Lucie is right in danger of seeing those limited hurricane force winds, unfortunately.
All right, let's go to this comment, and it comes in from
about hurricane force there. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's out of the question. I think anywhere around Cape Canaveral and south, probably the strongest winds, although even north of Cape Canaveral, there's a core of winds that are associated with the hurricane, the tropical entity of this. But then there's the outskirts of this, which, because this is such a broad circulation, and it's consolidated a little bit, but there's something extra going on dynamically in the atmosphere. We have the tropical system, but that is battling it out. There's a strong pressure difference between that and high pressure in the Great Lakes. So even on the very outskirts of the system, even when you go hundreds of miles away from the center, you're still going to deal with tropical storm force wind along the east coast that could very well get to 60 miles an hour. So it's a less intense impact near the core, but a much more widespread impact of moderate winds. And that's it's a very interesting difference between the purely tropical entity during the summertime and one of these, which is now technically tropical, but it still has some subtropical characteristics, hybrid characteristics.
I think the beach erosion will be a little less than like the Cocoa and New Smyrna areas just because of the way the beach is shaped. It's very long and sloping. We get those shorter beaches and those more steep beaches once you get north of Daytona, and that's where we see like the terrible erosion with the dunes and the water going over the dunes and that sort of thing.
You know, our executive producer, Alex, her mom lives in that general area, and she's been sending me videos all day of New Smyrna Beach. And it's really interesting because the dunes are huge there. But what's interesting is it almost looks like it's snowing because you can see in this video the foam coming up over the dunes. Now, the dunes protecting the coast there, but there is flooding on some of the roads there right by the beaches in New Smyrna Beach because it's been days of relentless gale force winds there. Seas that are by this evening going to be about 30 feet offshore, and a full moon all at the same time. It's a worst case scenario. You know, with the one exception that this is only a Cat 1 hurricane, it's not a stronger hurricane.
Let's go to this question from Jules on the WFLA Facebook page, #KJB. Should I put shutters up in Okeechobee?
It's an interesting question. If you can do it easily, you may want to try, although it's kind of getting a little late for that. And you could probably get it in there in the next couple hours, but it has to be fast. It can't be one of these things where, you know, you're outside, you these big panels and you're nailed. That's dangerous. If it's just the shutters that close, then I would say you're okay. You're okay for a couple hours, but you know, manually. And if you knew the fact that I don't know the difference between a hammer and a screwdriver, you would have been like, "Oh no, you shouldn't be doing this." So the point is now's not the time to do it if they're tough panels. But if they're sliding, then I think it's okay.
Let's go to this one from Larry Grimm on the WFLA Facebook page, #Hey Rebecca. What weather phenomenon caused such a late season tropical storm? Did we just launch a 30-minute conversation? Because you know what, though, actually probably the exact opposite, right? Because there is no weather phenomenon. We're in hurricane season.
It's hurricane season. But this is only the fourth landfalling hurricane in the U.S. since 1850 during the month of November.
And we talked earlier in the season about how the sea surface temperature anomalies were so different and unique this year. We had a ton of warm water north along the coastline of Europe, and we had a very similar sea surface temperature pattern in the 2013 hurricane season. That's the tied record lowest activity season. We only had 2 hurricanes that season. We only had about 15 tropical depressions or systems at all. But it was very unique because, and very similar to what we're seeing now, because the last tropical system faded on December 7th of that year. And so we had this obscenely warm water north of where it normally is and a pretty quiet season, and then a very late start and some late activity as well. So it's kind of similar. It's not unheard of. It's unusual, though.
And this is going to be a normal season. We have 14 named storms. 14 is normal. And by the way, 2-3 years ago, the normal was 12. It's been updated over the past couple of years. So this really would have been an above normal season a few years ago. 12 used to be the normal. So, but in terms of the amount of energy that's been expended, it's still going to end up probably below normal, although the system's always going to add something to it.
Yeah.
Folks, let's explain where our coverage is going to go from here, because there is a lot of coverage ahead. I want to explain how this works, because interactive live streaming, of course, TV is very simple in that, all right, you go on broadcast and you have your half hour and there's commercial breaks and all that. We don't take commercial breaks here on Tracking the Tropics. It's interactive live streaming. We're talking with our audience and we go on and we go off, and we do it as needed with our staff. So here's here's how things are going to work from this point forward. We are live on YouTube Live from here on out. If you are watching us on YouTube Live, this is the stream where we are going to be doing landfall coverage in the hours ahead. Social media platforms, they work differently. So YouTube Live, this is the URL. This is the live player. This is where you can find our coverage. Facebook Live, we stream intermittently. And what that means is that, of course, we're going to be launching Facebook streams over the course of the night, because Facebook and YouTube will operate differently when it comes to live streaming. So we'll be interacting with you across multiple platforms, just in different ways. So for people that want just a quick stop for where they can find our coverage over the next several hours, YouTube Live, there's one place, but otherwise on Facebook Live, you just want to follow our respective Facebook pages. WFLA Jeff, WFLA Rebecca, WFLA JB, or just the WFLA Facebook page. That's where, of course, our coverage is going to live on Facebook as well as on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. But if you want to interact with us, it's on Facebook Live and it's on YouTube Live. So this particular episode of Tracking the Tropics is about to come to an end. The stream will stay up, but we're going to be taking a brief break. Jeff, I know that you're going to be doing a stream here shortly. What is your plan for tonight?
My plan is, once I'm done with we have a 7 o'clock show. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to come back upstairs and I'm going to restart a stream, and we're going to be answering people's questions. And that's going to last through the 8 o'clock hour. Rebecca is going to be doing the weather on television during that time. And then Rebecca and I will kind of go back and forth between 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, both Rebecca and I will be doing the show downstairs, but we will still try to be here and available at 11. And then we're going to take that stream straight through to landfall tonight.
Yeah.
And then probably take a little, I know you probably don't want them as much detail, but take a little bit of a break in the middle of the night. And then restart it really early tomorrow morning. The whole team is going to be here. Eric's going to be here. Rebecca will be here later in the morning. Lee and Amanda will be here in the morning. I will get here very early also. And so we'll have you covered.
All right. So for Rebecca Barry and Jeff Berardelli, just a big thank you, because, of course, there's a lot of coverage ahead and a lot of your expertise that we are going to be tapping into as we talk to folks out there that just want the latest and want a very common sense breakdown of what exactly is going to be occurring, and do so calmly. And of course, with all the weather reports that are coming in, we're going to break down exactly what is happening during our landfall coverage here on Tracking the Tropics. So we are taking a brief break, and our streaming coverage resumes at 7:30. If you're on YouTube Live, you'll just see some graphics animated on your screen, including the track, including, I believe, Wobble Tracker as well. We're going to be playing back some graphics, and then we'll be back, and I'll ask our YouTube Live moderators out there, our terrific team of moderators, to let folks know that shortly after 7:30 is when Jeff Berardelli will be live on stream to answer your questions and continue our ongoing interactive streaming coverage. So thanks so much for joining us, folks, on Tracking the Tropics, and we'll see you at 7:30 with Max Fender, Chief